Wake up!
World, wake up!
Russia is a terrorist state!
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 Stop Russia, stop the war!
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 The invasion of Ukraine is a problem that is not only local, but a global problem. It is the example of the country that has given up the most to achieve world peace, and how that country was betrayed by the country that has promised that peace. Ukraine had given up, at that time, the third biggest nuclear arsenal in the world, in the biggest nuclear demilitarization in human history. This was done in the Budapest Memorandum. But Russia refused to keep their word. In fact, Russia was waiting for that exact moment when Ukraine would leave itself weakened, when Ukraine would be powerless to strike back at the Russian terrorist regime and stop their invasion of the Ukrainian people. That is what Russia is waiting for now. For the West, for the rest of the world to make mistakes such as that one. Mistakes such as trusting a terrorist regime like Russia. It is unacceptable for us to keep committing those same mistakes, because people's lives are at risk. Right now, people are dying in Ukraine. They've been dying there for a very long time now, ever since this war began. When this war began, the reaction was lukewarm as best. Very few people knew about it, and even less cared. But around 2 years ago, when Russia decided to escalate this war to the next level, or the next 10 levels perhaps, then people started realizing at last what was truly at stake. When Putin leveled Grozny to the ground, exterminating a large portion of Muslims living in Russia, the world was silent. When Putin invaded Georgia with the same exact cheap excuses he makes now for Ukraine, the world was silent. When Ukraine was invaded in Crimea, another one of the regions, by the way, that had voted to be part of Ukraine, that had voted to separate from the Soviet Union, the world barely said anything. But now, the world must see what we truly are dealing with at the moment. The world must see that if we allow the Russian terrorist regime off the hook, they will rebuild, regroup, and go for another try against Ukraine, then Moldova, and then perhaps a NATO country. Because indeed, if the rest of the world is so toothless as to prevent Russia from moving into Ukraine, why should they be fearing any kind of retaliation from NATO? That is what the Russian terrorist regime is counting on. The only thing preventing the Russians from using nuclear weapons and escalating this war even further is the fear of inevitable and overwhelming retaliation by the West. That is the only thing that is ever going to stop them. And unfortunately, they are losing that fear because of voices of supposed appeasement, voices of these hypocrites and apologists and Russian sympathizers and Russophiles who claim that we have to come to peace by negotiation with Russia. But how are we going to negotiate peace with a side that has betrayed every single previous negotiation? The Budapest Memorandum, the Ukraine and Russia Friendship Agreement, both of the Minsk agreements have all been betrayed by Russia, and far more than that. Russia has violated international laws and international conduct in terms of warfare. Russia has tortured and executed peaceful people and prisoners of war. They've done this and they continue to do this right now as we speak. That is why we say that we must stand together. Today, Ukraine. Tomorrow, Moldova. The day after, perhaps a NATO country. And then, no country will be out of reach for these terrorist regimes.